our experience is that actually there is more and more out input on social media and on YouTube videos, and that is where to try to replace the defunct media, which mainstream media, which is there, which is not doing its job.
Right, that's right. The problem with, of course, social media and the internet is it's hard to pick out it's easy to dismiss things. It's hard to pick out, what's respectable from what's worthless, and so people just dismiss it. I mean, John's achievement and mine to some extent, and a few other people's trying to getting published occasionally in mainstream, media. It helps because it's harder to dismiss what we say, but it also doesn't change very much. So I'm not sure I have a solution to that, except when you do publish, be more militant about it. This is what I've tried to do, is not to be. I don't think there's any virtue in being compromising or mouthing weasel words, or I think you have to be forthright and say exactly what's going on, and hopefully somebody listens.
Jerry? Before I say anything, I want to point out I have 2 daughters and 1 son, and I want as much from my 2 daughters as I want from my son out of life. The fact that I have to make a comment like that is affecting the society in which we live. But I'll give you my explanation as to why things are as they are. I have a daughter who's studying drama in Queen Mary University in London, and recently she asked me to help her with an essay, so I downloaded source material for her topic. And I came across a couple of PhDs written by students of English in different UK universities, and I went through them. And basically, they're based on opinion and interpretation, not on facts. And the references, of which there are many in the theses, refer to similar articles and theses that say the same thing. And just as an exercise for myself, because I'm both an engineer and a psychologist, I happened to be able to get access to a copy of Brian Cox's PhD thesis for his PhD in astrophysics. And because I've some background in maths and physics, I could see where he was going, but I couldn't understand where he was going because the maths were very complex. Whereas with the PhDs awarded for research in English literature, I could see they were rubbish and they were not based on facts. And that's the problem, because you have to trace it back to what's happening in the academic institutions, and you have to go back as far as the Frankfurt School of Culture and Marxism, critical theory, that had a huge impact on English studies departments. And out of the English studies departments came their journalists. Whether they did degrees in journalism or in English, they ended up in the media, whether it was the print or broadcast media. And their attitude to all topics is primarily ideological, driven from those background factors. It's very interesting that recently Steven Pinker published a book on, I think it's called The Enlightenment now, and he was defending the Enlightenment. Why? Because it's under severe attack from the postmodernist ideological school of thought. And I saw recently that Stephen Jobs, not the guy who set up Microsoft, Bill Gates' favorite book at the moment is a book called Factfulness, which is similar in content to Pinker's recent book. That's where the problem lies. Now, I don't know what the solution to it is, because within the academic institutions, a PhD from an English studies department carries the same weight in the academic world as an eminent PhD thesis in the field of astrophysics, and there is no comparison. And if I take a stone and drop it, it'll hit the ground. There is no debate about that. But then if you tap into what the English language departments are teaching, it's Wittgenstein who says there's no such thing as reality. Reality is how you interpret what you sense is going around. But the solution to a die-hard postmodernist is to take them up in the Tower of Pisa and say, look, I'm going to throw you off this. You needn't worry, because I'm sure one of the outcomes that you would envisage is that you'd fly up into the sky. That's where the problem lies. I do not know what the solution is, because the postmodernist approach dominates the media, and it's very, very difficult to get into that, because once they get in, it's like RTE here in Ireland. You have to toe the ideological line to get accepted as a reporter, as a journalist, as a researcher. And I was active in the same-sex marriage debate with John, and I'm proud to say that the two of us come from the only county in Ireland that voted for it, which is county.
Against it.
Against it.
Against it.
I had a debate with a former lecturer of mine, a professor of child development psychology in Trinity, on the issue of what you conclude from samples of heterosexual and homosexual couples raising children. The sample sizes in both cases, for comparison purposes, were 40. A sample size of 40 tells you nothing. And her argument, this is an eminent professor in Trinity, was that it is good enough science. Think about that, good enough science. There is science and there's pseudoscience. And unfortunately, because of that issue at the academic level, pseudoscience dominates. Because all of the research, say in evolutionary psychology, would dictate that the best way of raising children is a heterosexual couple, including the biological father and the biological mother. And it's known as the phenomenon of kin selection. The alternative of a father who isn't the biological father raising the mother, raising the child with the biological mother, is what's called reciprocal altruism. The non-biological father is in the family for what he can get from the biological mother. It's reciprocal. And if that reciprocity doesn't apply, the non-biological father is gone. The real tragedy and the real evidence supporting what you say is there are hundreds, if not thousands, of fathers here in Ireland, biological fathers, who'd love to be involved in raising their children, but they won't be allowed because of what you covered in your first book. But the problem lies within the academic institutions, and I don't know how you solve that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I have some quotes in the book.